योगः कर्मसु कौशलम्.
Greetings for the day. Yoga Karmasu Kaushalam. These words advise us to perform our allocated duty in an excellent manner. I, Dr. Shailesh Kumar Singh, thank UGC Human Resource Development Center of Gujarat University for giving me an opportunity to connect with you and deliver my session on scientific approach in conditioning and physical exercise management. I thank Professor Dr. Jagdish Joshi, Professor and Director of UGC HRDC of Gujarat University. I also would like to thank to Dr. Parikshit Singh D. Mandora, Coordinator, and Dr. Jignasha J. Waghela, Co-Coordinator, and their team for conducting such an amazing and unique refresher course. HRDC, Gujarat University, is ranked 15 in India and number 1 in Gujarat. It is pioneered and created history or benchmark by organizing several successful refresher courses and workshops, like the first of its kind online refresher course in India in the year 2018-19. About 2,500 participants have attended it. The first of its kind online annual refresher program in English language teaching, that is called ARPIT, with record break 9,000 participants in the year 2019 and 20. The Journal of UGC HRDC Gujarat University is indexed in Crossref and has digital object identifier DOI. It has MOU with UK and Canadian universities. Thank you. Now we move towards our today's session. So this is our today's topic of the session, various session, that is scientific approach in conditioning and physical exercise management. So these are the objectives that we are just going to cover it. The first one is training. The second one is conditioning. Second one is structure of conditioning. Fourth one is physical exercises. And fifth one is the recovery. So now we move towards the first objective, that is we call a condition. So before we just move towards the conditioning part, just let's have some brief idea about the training. So before we just move towards the training side, now just I have some reflection spot for you. Just I want to know a little bit about the thing. This is a just simple question. Give an example of an athlete event which is completed using anaerobic respiration. Now the answer is 100, 200 and 400 meter race. Give an example of sports which require both aerobic and anaerobic exercises. And the answer is football, netball, hockey, basketball. So in both the aspects, we can just think about like that. Most of the sports require aerobic and anaerobic type of activity. Now we move towards the next part, that is called a training. Training is the process of preparing an athlete physically, technically, tactically, psychologically, and theoretically rapidly for the highest level of the performance. So we can also that sports training is basically prepare a sports person for achieving his highest level of their potential, and that we call a sports performance. Now we move towards the conditioning part. Conditioning is the process of gradually preparing the body for strenuous physical activity, thus focusing attention on development of physical and motor fitness components. According to Tudor or Bompa, 1996, defines the biomotor abilities as the basis of the sports performance. That is, we call it strength, speed, endurance, flexibility, and coordinative ability. And these are the main biomotor abilities which helps to enhance the sports performance of an sports person. So conditioning basically a preparedness of the sports player. Now, why we move towards this? Why we just plan this training program according to physical conditioning aspect? It basically produces the optimal sports preparedness and desired sports result. It ensures an improvement in physical abilities. It decreases the number and the severity of the injuries. Most important thing. Nowadays, most of the players are just they are doing the most of their efforts how to reduce the injuries and how to manage the injuries and how to get the optimum performance, because most of the time injuries are the barriers in the life of the sports person. It also ensures delayed fatigue. Most important, if player is not fatigued, is not tired, is not exhausted, then he or she is able to perform for longer hours. He or she can go for training for longer hours. And what happens? Then the result is obvious or very good. Why? Because they are practicing more. It accelerates the recovery process after training and competition. So again, most important thing, recovery. And just we also covered this in later part of this session. And improve tactical and tactical potential. Most of the time players just say, why we just do this conditioning? Yes, it is very important. If you want to improve your technical and tactical aspects, then you must be conditioned so that you can bear the same amount of load that required at the time of the competition. And highly conditioned individuals demonstrate higher rate of energy transfer and removal of waste out of the cell compared to their less conditioned counterparts. Supercompensation in athletes younger than 18 years of age requires more time to materialize, while athletes older than 25 require more recovery time. So now the question is arise, most of you are just thinking about what is supercompensation. Now this clears the whole story of supercompensation. So what happens basically in sports, whenever players start doing the training or participating in the competition, at the same time players is ready to tackle the load. So what happened, we just say tackling training and competition demand is called load. So whenever player starts training, for example from here, this point, this is the activity from here, he or she starts the activity, like he or she is running. And what happens when he or she is just doing a training during the session, and what happened, the fatigue starts developing gradually, isn't it? Yes. And what happened after some time, the player stops that activity, and from here the compensation starts. From here the compensation starts, and players reaches to this And this point is exactly to the pre-activity level. And from reaching to this pre-activity level, and after some time, due to the taking the load, optimum amount of load, and then afterwards the regain in the tissues and the organs and the systems of our body. And this regain, after some time, what happened? It overshoots. And this overshooting of the recovery is basically called a supercompensation or the overcompensation. So it is very much required by the players when he or she get this zone, then afterwards he or she is able to tackle much higher level of load in the near future. So this tells basically the story about the load and adaptation. And then player is ready for the next higher level of the load. So we just focus on the definition and characteristics of the condition. Physical conditioning is a set of programs and procedures for development and maintenance of functional. Now question is, what is functional? Functional is basically which can be improved by the activation of the cardiovascular and respiratory system. That is called functional abilities. And motor abilities, which can be improved by the activation of neural and muscular system. And morphological characteristics. Now, what's morphological characteristics? Which can be changed by the activation of the oxygen transport system and the muscular system. That correspond to the level of the preparedness of a sports person. The characteristics of a sport and the condition in which it is implemented. So, in a nutshell, we can just say we are preparing a sports person for the particular sport so that he or she can bear the exact or required amount of load during the training or the competition. So if we just understand the one point, what is structure of the condition? So after knowing the term conditioning, we just understand what is the structure of the conditioning. So in this we just consider the endurance, strength, speed, flexibility and coordinative abilities. These are the basically 5 biomotor abilities. In the endurance, we just more focus about the sub part of the endurance is basic endurance, general endurance and the specific endurance. And then afterwards, what happens whenever athlete or sports person doing the training, getting the conditioning, at the time there is some physiological changes takes place, and that is called muscle composition, heart, lungs and capillaries, CNS and psychic, energy reserves and metabolism. So before moving to different methods adopting for the conditioning, we just understand what is a sports performance. So basically, now question arises, everybody in the world is trying to get the sports performance. So what is sports performance? It is basically a unity of execution of the actions, and out of the action there must be some result, and these result of the sports action is measured and evaluated on the basis of socially determined and agreed norm. That is called a sports performance. So if we just understand the concept, so just little bit I just give you the idea how to get the sports performance. This is a model of a sports performance. So I am just making you a diagram for you. This is a model. This is one big circle. This is first factor, that is we call conditioning. Very important for getting the performance, isn't it? Yeah, conditioning is very much important for getting the performance. The second one, the second factor is the technique, and the third one is the body constitution. Yeah. Body constitution means height, body weight, arm length, leg length. According to that, we just opt the game. We select our game according to the body constitution. Very important for getting the sports performance. And the fourth one is the tactics. So, and what is tactics? It is basically economical and purposeful action to overcome the opponent or the team. So these are the factors which required for the sports performance. And the most important, the biggest circle, just also focus on the personality. Personality is most important thing. Without personality, nobody can get the sports performance. Now, what is personality? Personality is basically your interest, your determination, dedication, punctuality, timing, will to do, robust, not giving the approach, respect to teammates, respect to teachers, respect to our coaches. This makes the whole personality. That's why this is most important. That's why this comes in the biggest circle. And these 5 factors, after understanding these 5 factors, we are able to achieve our sports performance. There are other external factors are also there, not just covering that. So now we just move towards the exercise method that is very much required with respect to load type. The first one is with respect to load type. That is continuous method, slow continuous or fast continuous, running for 45 minutes, for 50 minutes, for endurance training. Interval method. Interval method. This is one of the best methods for development of speed endurance. Most of the sports require the speed endurance. When the athlete reaches to the 180 beats per minute, at the same time he or she stops the activity. When he or she again be back to the 120 beats per minute, he or she again starts the activity, that is running. That is called interval method. And with respect to training mode, dynamic method. Dynamic means moving, like we are lifting the weight in this manner. This is we call dynamic method. And static method, without movement, without doing anything, like we are just holding the bar in this manner. So this is one of the static and dynamic method. We can use both the methods. Now the third one, with respect to muscle contraction type, very interesting. Concentric muscle contraction. In this, player lift the weight. Player lift the weight. This is called concentric muscle contraction method. And in this, second one, the weight comes down eccentrically. That is called a eccentric muscle contraction method. Like the weight is coming down and we are just resisting that particular weight. And isometric muscle contraction, just holding the bar for 10 count, 1, 2, 3, no movement. So this is on the basically on the respect to the muscle contraction. And then with respect to load level, extensive training method. Yes, higher intensity and higher volume. And basically, what is intensity and volume? Intensity and volume is always inversely proportionate to each other. If intensity is high, we have to reduce the volume. If the volume is high, we have to reduce the intensity. But in this extensive training method, what happens? We are just focusing on the higher intensity as well as the higher volume. It is basically meant for the advanced player. And this intensive training little bit lesser intensity as compared to the extensive one. And maximum training method, in this intensity is very high and we just focusing on we are focusing to develop the maximum strength, like 1 RM method. So like we can use these combined method, we can use standard load and we can use a variable load. Now, how to analyze the training session? The question arises, very important. Now, target zones and training thresholds. The working pulse rate or working heart rate is measurement of a pulse rate taken during or immediately after the exercise. This is an accurate guide to intensity the heart has been working. A target zone can be set for both aerobic and anaerobic exercises using the following method. Maximum heart rate, MHR, is basically 20 minus age. If we don't have the maximum heart rate, then we use this maximum 220 minus maximum heart rate, 220 minus the age. And we must also know the resting heart rate. That is, for example, we just take here as a 65. That is called aerobic target zone. For example, we are just calculating this. And in this, the minimum training threshold is 60% MHR. And maximum training threshold is 80% of MHR. And anaerobic target zone is 80 and maximum is training threshold is 90% MHR. Now the age is of 20-year-old student. Now how we can calculate this? So it's very easy, and by doing this we are able to use this scientific methodology until and unless it is not a scientific approach. So how we calculate this? So it's very simple. For example, if you know the maximum heart rate, then no need to apply this. And if you don't know the maximum heart rate, then 220 minus the age. Here is 200 for this student. We have to take this 200, the maximum heart rate. And the 65 is the resting heart rate. We have to minus with this. So what's the answer? We just get the pulse 135, and then 135, after getting this we have to multiply with 0.060 and 0.60 with the pulse, that is we have 65, and afterwards we get the answer, that is 146 beats per minute. Now what happened every time if we just see for training threshold for 80%, now we have to just change the, we have to just use here 80. If we just want to know the 90% of that particular guy, of that particular student, then we again have to change. So like that we can calculate the aerobic target zone, anaerobic target zone, and the basically the different target zone. How much intensity that particular student doing the work or the player is doing the work. So what is intensity? Intensity is basically rate of doing the work. And what is volume? Total work done in single session is called volume. So now the most important thing, we just focus on this part. If the heart rate is worked over 95% of its maximum, it becomes dangerous. So avoid this thing. Now the following graph is basically tells the whole story about the different target zone that we already discussed. So this is basically aerobic target zone up to 165 and 120. Why 120? Because 70 to 120 we just gave for the warming up. Warming up, after completion of the warming up, we start doing our training, that is for aerobic target zone up to 165, and then afterwards about 180 to 190 is just focusing on the anaerobic target zone. and this is a danger zone, just avoid. So just avoid this training zone. So basically we just utilize this aerobic target zone and anaerobic target zone in our conditioning program according to our desired program, whatever we want to develop. If we just want to develop speed endurance, then we focusing on the anaerobic target zone. If we just want to improve, just try to improve the simple endurance, long distance endurance, then we are just focusing on the aerobic target zone. Now, what is endurance? The question arises. Endurance is an ability to work under the condition of the fatigue. That is called endurance. So how we can develop the endurance? Long-term endurance, medium-term endurance, short-term endurance. So in long-term endurance, the training methodology is predominantly continuous method, interval method, and basically we just use this volume is high extended continuous running for 5 to 8 kilometers, and intensity is basically a medium, 3 to 4 meters per second. And interval method, extended pace running of distance longer than 800 meters, high intensity. Why? Because interval method we are applying, so intensity is high, 75% to 90% of the best result. We must know the best of the athlete, then afterwards we can calculate the 75% and 90% of the intensity. Then medium term endurance, continuous method, high continuous running for 2-3 kilometers, medium intensity is 3 to 5 meters per second, and interval method, pace running of 200-600 meter distances, high 80-95% of the best result. Short term endurance, predominantly interval method, pace running of 100-200 meter distances, intensity is 80 to 90%, and in the short term endurance, interval method is short sprint running method, 20 meters, 60 meters, 120 meters, and maximum intensity is 90 to 100%, because we are just focusing on the, because volume is here is very less, that's why we are increasing the intensity. So you can just see volume and intensity is inversely proportionate to each other. Now again this is an activity, and here this chart just tells the heart rate of an athlete, 60, 80, 140 and 160, and then again just it goes down up for 90, and then again it's up to 160, and then maintenance of their 160, and like that. So this graph tells the whole story of the training, and this is the example of the part leg training. Part leg training is wonderful training for development of the endurance. So this is the graph. We can also plot this graph, and this graph tells us the exact story of the training, whether he or she is maintaining his or her heart rate to that particular level. This is an example only. We can also use for slow continuous, fast continuous, for varied pace. We have different type of methods that we can apply. This is one of the example how we can plot the graph and get the exact scientific data. Now what is strength? Ability to overcome the resistance is called strength. And we have a varied form of exercise that we already discussed in the previous slides. Different methods of use for development of the strength. So here we are just focusing on the free weight. This is an example of the free weight exercising. And here the athlete is developing his or her strength. So what are the different methods? So dynamic effort method, we are just picking the dumbbells or the weight bars and doing the dynamic effort method. It's very popular method. Everybody is using. So most of the time, what happens? Second method of this is also known as isotonic training. Very popular. Everybody know about this isotonic training and repetitive effort method. So what is the character? Use of low, medium, and high external load. Sometimes you also use throwing exercise like medicine balls. Body weight as a load in dynamic condition. We also use our body weight as a resistance. Weight training exercises, concentric muscle contraction, dominant mass of the weight varies. We have to change our weight also. Pyramid training, again a very popular method, pyramid training method. Most of them athletes are using this method. Constant external load during the whole range of the motion. Training with the elastic band. This is a new thing. Nowadays, most of the players are using TheraBand, elastic band. So load is achieved and increased by stretching the elastic band. Isometric method, effort method, no movement, just holding the bar. Just holding the bar for 10 seconds, for 15 seconds. And the popular name of this training is static training. And one of the most important training is also there is isokinetic training. And in this training, the range of motion throughout the range, the effort remains the same throughout the range of motion remains the same. That is called isokinetic training method, and it required a machine that is called pneumatic isokinetic trainer, and it is done only with the help of the dynamometry. So it is basically computerized machine. In this, dynamometer is assigned to like 30 degree, 60 degree, or 90 degree, or 120 degree per second, and athlete have to perform that movement, and the movement throughout the range of the movement, the resistance remains the same. So this is little bit and very much different from the isotonic and isometric type of training method. Now, what is speed? Speed is basically, we just say, ability to perform the activity as quickly as possible in minimum time. So in this, again, we just understand the speed. Before that, we just understand different types of speed. So what are the main different type of type of speed is? First is movement speed, then reaction speed, and then afterwards locomotion, and then the acceleration and the locomotion, and then after speed and run. These are the 5 types of speed. So how we can develop the speed? So we can develop the speed with the repetition method, that is called maximum intensity. Short running distance up to 4 to 6 repetition, 2-3 sets with an extended period of active rest, 3 to 5 minutes. And interval training method, maximum intensity, because we are developing the speed. That's why we require a maximum intensity. We must focus on the maximum intensity. And when the intensity is high, we have to reduce the volume. That is why only 3 to 4 repetitions, 2-3 sets with the rest period of 4 to 6 minutes, and full recovery is very essential. And then running with the acceleration method. So we can use the 60 meters distance or 100 meter distance. We are developing the acceleration ability of an athlete. And running with the flying start. Now we are focusing on the locomotion, maintenance of the highest peak of the speed for the longer duration of the time. That is called basically locomotion. So acceleration phase is performed prior to the running, and then after we have to maintain that 40-50 meter with maximum speed. So these are some few examples for development of the speed. And then what is flexibility? Ability to execute the movement with greater amplitude or the range. That is called the flexibility. And the flexibility, how we can develop. Before that, we just understand there's 2 types of flexibility: active and passive flexibility. Passive is done with the help of the partner, and active is done by the athlete with herself or himself. So how to develop the flexibility? These are the three methods. First is static stretching method. Static stretching method, slow, hold the muscle to highest range of movement and then hold that particular group of muscle for 6 to 10 seconds. That is called slow stretching and hold method, and we also call it static stretching method. This is an example for this static stretching method. And dynamic stretching method, one of the most popular. We also call a ballistic method. Ballistic. In this, the athlete is in movement and he or she is doing the stretching in a dynamic movement. Like we do some jumping jack exercises. And maximum stretching method, this method is based on PNF, proprioceptive neuromuscular felicitation. In this, first of all, athlete has to hold for 6 to 7 seconds for the maximum range, and then afterwards again stretch further to their maximum limit about 6 to 7 seconds. Basically, this type of stretching method is only meant for the advanced players only. Now, this is again an example of this is a passive stretching with the partner. And then the most important one, the coordinative ability. Ability to execute the movement in generalized and stabilized pattern of motor control and regulation process in the effective and quality sports movement. Without coordinative abilities, no player is able to perform his or her quality movement in the sports. And that's why in technique, this quality movement is required. So coordinative ability plays a vital role. Again, now according to Bloom 1978, he gave us 7 more coordinative abilities. These are differentiation abilities, orientation abilities, coupling abilities, rhythm abilities, reaction abilities, balance abilities, and adaptation abilities. These 7 abilities makes the whole coordination ability. And this is given by the Bloom in 1978. So, what is the development method for this? First, by acquiring new and diverse movement structures, so we have to practice a new movement. Like if the player is learning a new technique, that is a new movement, and he or she is acquiring that new movement. And for that, the repetition is most important thing for learning it. For developing the coordination ability, the most important thing that we can teach this thing in early age of the child, about 7-8 years. It's beneficial because this ability is largely depend upon the central nervous system. And afterwards, the second method, by performing the acquired movement in the changed condition. First of all, we have to learn the movement, learn the technique, okay? Then we have to focus on that particular technique in different condition, like in 1 versus 1. Before, previously, player was performing without the defender or without the opponent, but now he or she have to perform in front of the opponent. Now the conditions change. So here is some example. So these are some examples. Like this is an example of coupling and the orientation and the adaptation and differentiation ability. He or she is just circling his arm and simultaneously dribbling the ball, jumping with dribbling, and raising the hand, using arm and leg. This is combination. This is example for development of the coupling. So like that, these are some few examples for development of the coordinative ability. Now we move towards our second topic, the same session, that is the physical exercises and their management. So physical exercises are the principal means of training. According to the effect of physical exercise on the performance capacity in a sport, they are classified into general, specific, and competition exercises. An exercise can have different effect on the performance in different sports. And it must be classified on the basis of scientific and systematic manner. So, whenever we just talk about the physical exercise, it is actually a principal means for enhancing the sports performance. There are some additional means also. But for getting the direct and immediate result, we need a physical exercise. And it must be based on the scientific principle. And there are some criteria for using the physical exercises. Though we can apply any physical exercises for getting the performance, but the result is not the immediate. That is why we are using the term always classify the physical exercise on the basis of the scientific principle, and it must be systematic. Actual effect of exercises depends upon several factors, which the important ones are the following. First one, athlete's performance, athlete's abilities, and training load. We can increase and decrease the load by using these physical exercises. It is one of the means of recovery also. Like we are just giving a passive exercises, jogging, slow jogging exercises to reduce the weight, to reduce the load. Assessment of loading and performance. For assessment, again we use these physical exercises. And for capacity building, until and unless players are not able to enhance their capacity, the players are not able to perform in the competition. Coach's PT knowledge and personality. This is again a main factor. Competition. Ultimately, players have to perform in the competition. And for the player, the competition is a platform, stage to show his or her caliber, his or her talent, and the nutrition aspect. So for basically physical exercises is basically depend upon the nutrition aspect also. If the players not getting the enough balanced diet, then there must be a chance of negative performance, or we also call a overload. The situation overload arises due to only this. And what is overload? Deterioration in the performance is called overload. Psychological characteristics, motivation is also required for doing the physical exercises. Methods adopted for imparting theoretical knowledge and instruction. How you impart the knowledge, how you instruct the things. Sports equipment and facilities, most important thing. Then afterwards you can design your physical exercise. If you want to develop the jumping ability, then you require the hurdles, boxes. So again, sports equipment and facilities plays a vital role for designing the physical exercise. Now, types of physical exercise. Basically, there are three types of physical exercises: general, specific, and competition form of physical exercises. I just mentioned here, anyone can design his or her own exercises that gives the immediate effect. This is the most important thing. And how we can? Just by doing this. First of all, we have to understand this. This is the one pyramid. Below the pyramid, there is a general physical exercises, then specific, physical exercises, and this is called a competition form of exercises. So here we just write 100%. I just making one diagram so that we can easily understand this concept, and this is 0% identical. So identical. 100% identical, and this is 0% identical. Okay, when movement structure, we write here movement structure and load structure. Is almost to the 100%, then the same exercises become the competition form of exercises. When it is not identical, it's 0% identical, then it is called a general form. Less identical, then it's called general form of exercises. When the same exercises, if the player is doing with a 50% of identical, then the same exercise becomes the specific form of exercise. So, like this, movement structure and load structure. When become the same up to 100%, then the same exercise becomes the competition form of exercise. For example, I just took the example in the football. Football, if the player is running, jogging, then it is a general form of exercise. But when the same player is running and dribbling with the ball and using high knee action, then it's almost similar to the competition. Movement structure and load is now getting very much identical. So that is become a specific form of exercise. And when the same player doing the dribbling between the cones and then afterward shoots the ball directly inside the goal post, then the same exercise becomes the competition form of exercises. So here the most important thing just I want to mention here, the movement structure, and movement structure is basically depend upon the spatial and the temporal. Spatial is related to the space and temporal is related to the time. So this helps to design our exercises. And load structure is basically physiological, physical and psychological load is almost at par that is required in the competition. Then the same exercise becomes the competition form of exercise. And most of the time what happens, most of the players just focusing on this general form of exercise. General form of exercises. They are not focusing, they are not giving more emphasis on the competition form of exercises. And it is equally required. It is equally required for getting the sports performance. And we can design our own different exercises according to our demand, according to our level of the player, according to our capacity of the player. So which type of exercise we have to give, and these exercises have a different load parameters. Obviously, general exercises having less load as compared to specific and the competition form of exercise. Now, general physical exercises and their effect. It affects improvement of general physical fitness, coordinative ability, general coordination skills, general tactical efficiency, maintenance of above mentioned factors, recovery and relaxation, development of general psychic qualities and abilities needed for training and the competition. And basically when we are using this general form of exercise in preparatory period in our planning, when we design our plan, then we use TP1, TP2, TP1, TP2 and TP, transition phase, preparatory phase 1, preparatory phase 2, competition phase, and then the transition phase. And then this specific physical exercise, and what is the effect? Improvement of specific motor abilities that required in the competition, technical abilities. It improves the technical and tactical efficiency of the player. Without improving the specific physical exercises, without using this specific physical exercises, nobody is able to develop his or her technical and tactical abilities. So it is most important. Maintenance of our mentioned factors, development of psychic and qualities and abilities for a sport. When we use this preparatory period, in preparatory period and in competition period, we use in both the periods. Competition form of physical exercise, very essential and very much required. Achievement of top form, improvement in stabilization of highly specific psychic and motor abilities, perfection of skills under competition condition, perfection of tactical efficiency. Most of the time, players are not able to perform in the match, in the real-time scenario. And this is the main factor, because players are not practicing the competition of form of exercise during the training. That's why they are not able to apply in the match. And when we have to apply this, what is the period? Competition period. Now, physical exercise management, how we manage this thing. So, before prescribing the exercises, we must use few points. Consider few points. Prescription of appropriate exercise stress is the important for optimal physiological adaptation. This needs a solid understanding of scientific principles and program design guidelines. Should be based on sound, rational, logical. It must be logical. Proper exercise management only possible with understanding of the training. This is also called the philosophy of training. Understanding our players. First of all, understand ourselves, understand our players, understand the opponent team, and understand the opponent players. Then afterwards, we can design our physical exercises. Then training response. What is the response of the particular exercise that we have to consider? Pre-training status. Is there any pre-training status of the players? What is the sports demand? Whether we are participating in inter-district level, district level, state level, national level, inter-school, inter-university, or all India university, that we have to design, that we have to consider. What is the demand? According to demand, we have to design the physical exercise. Different training variables. We must use different training variables also. And what are the training goals? The training goals determine. Again, I'm just focusing whether this time we have to go into just for participation, for winning the medal, like that. The individual need. What is the need of the individual? Like, what is the focus he or she want to give? Whether we have to improve the flexibility part, whether we have to improve the strength, whether we have to improve the endurance. So like that, we have to first focus on this aspect, individual need. Analysis is most important thing. Analysis before physical exercise management is most important. That you generally do by using the test and measurement, assessment of sports person. It helps, it guides us to design the physical exercise because we know the maximum heart rate of the player. We know the load bearing capacity of the player. Then afterwards we can give the scientific training. Sports person needs and goals. Again, I'm just focusing on the needs and goals. Like sometimes what happens, there's a lacking in the strength in lower part, not in the upper part. Because most of the players are focusing on the upper part of the body. Individuals' current fitness level. This helps. Analysis helps. What is the current fitness level? Training background. Previous level of training. What is his or her previous performance or training background? Exercise technique experience. What basically the experience, previous experience. History of injury. Is there any injury? Now, how to manage that injury? How to rehabilitate that injury and strengthen that particular joint? And then that player again come again in the training or in the competition. The effect of physical conditioning on athlete's body is basically in different conditions. You can't say that. To understand completely the effect of general conditioning and physical preparation must be familiar with the effect of conditioning training. Different physical conditioning programs activate individuals' organs and organ systems in different ways. So we have to apply the right type of training according to our demand. You just see what is the load factor when the footballer is kicking the ball. This is basically a critical zone of the locomotive system of football players, which absorb most of the load and are thus most prone to the injury. And if we just strengthen these muscles well in advance before the player goes in the competition and get injured, for avoid this, we just gave the right type of physical exercises so that he or she can not get injured during the competition. So now the most important factor just we are discussing, and recovery. It is also a very much important nowadays. We are just focusing on the sports performance, but for sports performance, we need a load. We are just focusing on the load part only. We are discussing on the load parameter only, but we are very less talking about the recovery. Recovery is also equally required as load for getting the performance. Nowadays, most of the teams in world just focusing more on recovery. How we just give recovery to our players. so that he or she can again with full energy and enthusiasm in the next session, in the next competition. You just imagine, like Ronaldo is one of the greatest footballers. He continues participate in all the format of the competition. Why? Because he is just focusing on the load as well as the recovery also. Because recovery is also a most important factor. Most of the time, we just forget this term, recovery. So, what is basically a recovery? Basically, recovery rate is the time it takes for the body to return to its pre-exercise condition. And here, lots of factors are working on that. The fitter we are, the quicker our recovery rate. So first factor is the fitness. That is, if we are able to bear the load and we are adapt to the particular type of load that we already discussed in previous slide, the word super compensation. Super compensation basically is the process of the adaptation. The fitter we are, quicker our recovery rate. That is, the quicker our pulse will return to its normal resting rate. A lot of time when I'm just giving training to my students, what happens? Some of just get their recovery quicker as compared to other ones. Why? Because they are much fitter to their counterparts. This can be tested by taking the resting pulse rate. So I just mentioned here, everyone must have the record of their players or their students of resting pulse rate, and it is very easy. Nowadays, lot of gadgets are there in the market, and one of the great gadgets is a Polar. Polar is one of the wonderful watch. It comes with a lot of varieties, and a lot of things are inside that. So directly you can get the resting pulse rate, and by using your carotid pulse, you can also just check your resting pulse rate after complete sound sleep of 8 hours, night sleep up, and then after early morning when you raise, then you just check your resting pulse rate. So that tells your resting pulse rate. Exercising and then timing how long it takes for the heart to come back to its resting rate. So I just also tell you how to plot a diagram for that. But not only for this, recovery also requires nutrition. Good nutrition is also required. Rest is also most important thing. How the other means, additional means of recovery are using, like massage, other therapeutic use, cold bath they are using. So there are several other means also for getting the recovery. So I'm just taking a few examples here, like speed. If the person is doing the speed training with the moderate intensity, then you just think it requires 12 to 24 hours to recover that player. Speed power, explosive power with medium intensity, and the load is very high, it requires 24 to 36 hours to recover. Just imagine. And for the speed endurance, that's why I just make it in the red line. The intensity is maximum, load is also maximum, and you just think it required 48 to 72 hours for recovery. And how you can give the training before that, before the recovery? So this level of time is required for recover the player. Then elasticity and flexibility. if you just do flexibility training. Hardly you require a 6 hours for recovery. So it basically tells the whole story. If you give the higher load with high intensity, then stressor required a more time to recover. This is simple principle. And then there is basically a task again, how to plot a recovery. So first of all, rest for 3 minutes and then take your resting pulse rate and record it. Beats per minute, I just tell you. First count of beat is 0, count for 15 seconds, then by 4. Now rest and record your pulse for more time, once every minute. So like that, you can or anyone can just design or plot his or her own recovery rate. Like for example, here is 60 beats per minute. The resting pulse rate is 60 beats per minute. It is basically for them. And exercise for 1 minute, the pulse rate goes up to 150 beats per minute. Like here, it is 150 beats per minute. This is resting pulse rate 60, and here it is 150 beats per minute. And then after 2 minutes, just check your pulse and record it. It goes down to 130. After 3 minutes, it goes down to 110 beats per minute. After 4 minutes, it goes down to 85 beats per minute, and after 5 minutes, it goes down to 60 beats per minute. So why I'm just focusing on this recovery plot, recovery rate? Because it tells the fitness level of the individual. So according to that, we can give the load to the particular player according to their recovery rate, because everyone is not equal and every shoe is not fit to everyone. So we have to customize our training according to needs and demands of the individual. And we also know how to analyze our training and also know how to monitor the training. So in nutshell, we can say this is basically a scientific approach in conditioning and physical exercise management. If we are using these methods, we definitely get the immediate result. And these are the basically a time-tested methodology that is used all over the world. So basically, if we want an immediate performance, we must focus on the factors that required for the sports performance. And these are the most important factors is technical aspect, tactical aspect, conditioning, body constitution, and the most important and utmost important one is the personality factor. And afterwards, we definitely get the sports performance, we definitely get the performance in our sport. So with the last, no pain, no gain, and never give up. Because sometimes what happens, it is actually a human tendency sometimes, like players are sometimes not able to perform to their level best, and we first of all we have to make a habit, and then afterwards when the habit becomes, then after we focus on our training aspect, and definitely it will help to enhance their performance. These are my references: Periodization Theory and Methodology of Training, NSTA Guide to Program Design, Science of Sports Training, and Science of Sports Training. Thank you